Making a peace sign while having your photo taken could lead to a whole lot of trouble. Thieves could steal your fingerprints. That's according to Asao Ichizan, a professor at Japan's National Institute of Informatics.
If a fingerprint is stolen, if they're able to copy that fingerprint, fake ones can be produced. One can use it to assume another's identity, such as accessing a smartphone or breaking and entering into a restricted area, such as an apartment.
In an experiment, Ichizan showed how fingerprints can be stolen from a photograph taken with a high-resolution digital camera from up to 3 meters away. The copied fingerprints, Ichizan says, were a near 100% match.
We're the first in the world to use a commercial camera in extracting information based on fingerprints.
But a solution might be right at your fingertips. Biometric jammers, which are transparent film stickers made with nail art templates and white acrylic paint, may protect fingerprints from being copied. As of now, there is no evidence that hackers are using photographs to steal people's fingerprints, but the new technology could come in handy as fingerprints become used more often for shopping and security.
Well, the Big Apple wants to keep tabs on just about anyone entering or leaving the city. New York City leaders want to create a database that can combine both license plate numbers and facial recognition.
In a city that already has a database on many residents, drivers, and non-residents, now New York City wants even more information about where you've been, where you're going, and who you're with. New York City has recently launched initiatives as part of the New York Crossing Project that would track anyone who is entering or leaving the city, including those in taxis, Ubers, and any other car services. The initiative will combine emerging technologies into the security design of bridges and tunnels across the state. At each crossing and at structurally sensitive points on bridges and tunnels, advanced cameras and sensors would be installed to read license plates and test emerging facial recognition software. The equipment would compare features like eyes, nose, cheekbones, and jaw with stored images to find matches. These technologies would be applied across airports and transit hubs to ultimately develop one system-wide plan. New York City Governor Cuomo said that this transformational project will revolutionize transportation in New York and ensure that our state is built to lead for generations to come. But many are concerned that by combining facial recognition and license plates with other databases like driver's license and property records is a complete invasion of privacy.
Just days before he leaves office, President Obama has given the U.S. National Security Agency wider powers. Under the new rules, the NSA, through its vast surveillance capabilities, it'll allow more intelligence officials access to search through raw data.
At least 16 U.S. intelligence agencies have been granted unprecedented access to intercepted personal communications obtained by the National Security Agency. According to the report, the changes in these rules will give these agencies access to raw information obtained by way of email, phone, or satellite communications. This announcement signals a departure from previous NSA policy, which required the agency to filter information that was obtained through surveillance programs before it was disseminated to other agencies. This is a process known as minimization. This news has already drawn opposition from groups like the American Civil Liberties Union. In a statement, the ACLU added that, quote, "This raises serious concerns that agencies that have responsibilities such as prosecuting domestic crimes, regulating our financial policy, and enforcing our immigration laws, will now have access to a wealth of personal information that could be misused." The ACLU is also calling for Congress to provide oversight for the new rules. U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch signed off on the changes at the beginning of the month, with days before the start of the new presidential administration. We should note that approval for the reformed rules did not require any action by congressional lawmakers.
My fellow Americans, it has been the honor of my life to serve you. I won't stop. In fact, I will be right there with you as a citizen for all my remaining days.
President Barack Obama pledging to continue his role as a public servant after he leaves the White House. Yet without the spotlight of the presidency, what role will he take as Citizen Obama?
I'm certain that Barack Obama will be called upon as an elder statesman, as a sage, a political sage, if you will.
Democrats had hoped Hillary Clinton would become their new leader, picking up where Obama left off. But with Donald Trump the next president,
Obamacare is a complete and total disaster.
Historians like Mark Updegrove, author of a book on President's second acts, sees Obama filling the leadership void in his own party.
So much of the Obama presidential legacy is at risk with a Trump presidency. Trump's made that very, very clear. In particular, the undoing of Obamacare. So my guess is that you're going to see President Obama roll up his sleeves, get very involved in creating a new Democratic Party.
Obama is also backing a new group chaired by former Attorney General Eric Holder. It will focus on improving the Democrats' hand when congressional districts are redrawn in 2020.
The NDRC will ensure that Democrats have the necessary resources to fight in the courts for better matters.
Backing such a broad political organizing effort marks a rare step for a former president, and he's already signaling he may break silence and weigh in on a Trump administration.
If I think that it's necessary or helpful for me to defend those ideals, then I'll examine it when it comes.
In another rare move for a departing president, he and his family will be staying in D.C. so that their youngest daughter, Sasha, can finish high school, renting a home in the same neighborhood as Trump's daughter, Ivanka, and her husband, Jared Kushner. Already, the Obamas are looking ahead to opening a presidential library. And the book Obama wants to write, that's expected to come with an advance of more than $20 million. At 55, Obama joins other relatively young former presidents, like Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, both of whom found a way to wield influence for decades, even outside the Oval Office.
Some of the entertainment world's biggest stars plan to protest Donald Trump's inauguration the night before his big day. Famed Trump impersonator Alec Baldwin has teamed up with filmmaker Michael Moore to organize in front of the Trump International Hotel in New York City. Among those planning to attend, Mayor Bill de Blasio, Reverend Al Sharpton, Mark Ruffalo, and Rosie Perez. In a statement, Ruffalo said, "We are sending a message to Washington that we will fight at every step discrimination and harmful policies today, tomorrow, and every day." Greenpeace organizers say they expect thousands to attend.
A Martin Luther King Memorial March in Miami was disrupted as thousands ran for cover after gunfire rang out. There were no reports of any deaths, but 8 people were said to have been shot. Police said they were aged between 11 to 30. One of them, a 20-year-old man, was in a critical condition. 2 people have been detained for questioning and 2 weapons were recovered by police after an extensive search.
Today is not only Martin Luther King Jr. Day, it is also Religious Freedom Day, and President Obama issued a proclamation for it, an excerpt. Part of being American means guarding against bigotry and speaking out on behalf of others, no matter their background or belief, whether they're wearing a hijab or a baseball cap or a yarmulke or a cowboy hat.
The president has the lingo down. In 8 years, he's learned the lingo, but his actions fall far short of holding up religious freedom. Look, let's talk about the Little Sisters of the Poor, an organization that helps the poorest in our society, where he persecuted and prosecuted them because they didn't want to come in line with his politics on abortion and contraceptive. We look at organizations like Hobby Lobby, simply wanting to live out their faith. Religious freedom is not simply the ability to read the words of Scripture. It's the ability to live out the principles and the precepts that are found on the pages of Scripture in everyday life. That is what this president has dismantled policy by policy.
The Pope is calling for renewed action in protecting young refugees as yet another boat sinks in the Mediterranean with dozens still missing. Pope Francis spoke at the Vatican to mark the Church's World Day of Migrants on Sunday, January 15th. The previous day, a migrant boat carrying around 100 people went down some 30 miles off the coast of Libya. Just 4 people survived and 8 bodies have been recovered, according to the Italian Coast Guard. Thousands of people trying to reach the European Union have drowned in the Mediterranean over the past year. During Sunday's blessing, Francis said, quote, "We must adopt every possible measure to guarantee young migrants protection and defense, as well as integration." The UN Refugee Agency says the number of unaccompanied minors entering Italy continues to climb.
Time now for Focus. Today we head to Italy, where radicalization is on the rise.
A typical daily scene in the port of Augusta in Sicily, one of the main entry points to Europe. In 2016, more than 180,000 asylum seekers landed in Italy. Authorities are justifiably concerned. Italy was the transit point for some of the terrorists involved in the recent attacks in the heart of Europe. The most recent case is Anis Amri, the alleged author of the Christmas market attack in Berlin. He landed in Sicily in 2011. Amri was finally shot and killed by police at the end of December in the north of Italy, not far from this station in the northern suburbs of Milan.
Of all the possible places in Europe he could have gone, it's no coincidence he ended up in Sesto San Giovanni.
No doubt he was looking for someone who could help him. I don't think he was there by chance. He had contacts here.
Suspicion and mistrust, because the Milan area is one of the hubs for jihadist recruitment in Italy. Over the last 15 years, more than 50% of arrests for terrorist activities have been made in this area. The police in Milan have increased the number of controls on the street to try and stem the flow, and over 600 cameras are tracking all suspect behavior.
The leader of Austria's Freedom Party, the FPO, has called for a crackdown on what he calls the Islamization of the country.
We need a ban on foreign funding of Islamic unions. We need to deport criminals and those who have illegally entered the country. We need to close down radical Islamic kindergartens, unions and prayer rooms. In Vienna alone, we have 150 such prayer rooms.
The FPO has long courted a controversy in Austria. It's even been referred to as far-right and neo-Nazi for its stance on migration and Islam. Despite that, a recent poll shows it's now the strongest party in Austria in terms of popular support, and it's attracting followers fast.
In his first international interview as President-elect, Donald Trump revealed insights which shook up Capitol Hill and rattled some nerves in the EU Parliament.
The interview was with The Times. It's a British publication. In it, Mr. Trump touched on a myriad of hot-button issues, both domestic and foreign. He criticized German Chancellor Angela Merkel for taking in a flux of Syrian refugees, and even went as far as to say that it was this decision that led to the attack at the Christmas market. He went on to say that if the EU hadn't been, quote, forced to take in all those refugees, you wouldn't have had Brexit. Now, the president-elect predicted further fracturing of the European Union, citing that European countries would each want to keep their own identity, a theme that the American mainstream media has called Trump nationalism, the Brexit being a symptom of this nationalistic trend.
I think Brexit's going to end up being a great thing. People don't want to have other people coming in and destroying their country. I thought the UK was so smart in getting out.
Our focus is in negotiating with a big bloc of the European Union to get a trade agreement done. And UK is going to be in the back of the queue.
This may not be the case, according to U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. In a new UK and German newspaper interview, Mr. Trump said he'll offer the UK a quick and fair trade deal. In Brussels on Monday, British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who campaigned for the UK to leave the European Union, welcomed Mr. Trump's remarks.
I think it's very good news that the United States of America wants to do a good free trade deal with us and wants to do it very fast, and it's great to hear that from President-elect Donald Trump. Clearly it'll have to be a deal that's very much in the interests of both sides, but I've no doubt that it will be. Thank you.
The UK government won't be able to sign any new bilateral trade deals until it is formally withdrawn from the European Union. But it is free to scope out possible agreements before then. Prime Minister Theresa May has said she plans to trigger the process for leaving the EU by the end of March. She's expected to make a speech on Brexit on Tuesday, with trade likely a key focus.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel has insisted Europe's destiny lies in its own hands. Her comment comes in response to Trump's claim in an interview that other countries would leave the EU after Britain. I think for us Europeans, we have our fate in our own hands, she says. I will continue to work for an efficient cooperation between the 27 member states.
And when it came to Merkel and Russian President Vladimir Putin, the president-elect put the two world leaders on par with one another. another, which dismayed those on Capitol Hill, citing that Merkel has been a tried and tested ally of the U.S. This equal footing of Merkel and Putin puts politicians in Washington as well as the EU Parliament into a frenzy as the president-elect went on to double down on his condescension of NATO. Using the same rhetoric that we heard on the campaign trail, Mr. Trump stuck with his belief that NATO is obsolete and is calling out several countries who he claims have not paid their, quote, fair share. This has NATO allies worried because recently NATO has been growing their troop and equipment stockpile along the European-Russian border, including 800 troops sent into Estonia recently, most of whom will be permanently based. He mentioned how he'd like to work on a deal with Russia to decrease nuclear arms and touched on removing sanctions against the state.
Trump said, quote, "Let's see if we can make some good deals with Russia," adding that in his opinion, nuclear weapons should be reduced.
This would certainly indicate quite a major shift in policy, considering the state of the relationship between the U.S. and Russia in these last years of the Obama administration. In fact, Trump has said that in exchange to a nuclear arms deal, the lifting of sanctions against Russia is a possibility. And this, of course, comes after last year Russia suspended nuclear cooperation with the U.S. because of the sanctions the United States had imposed against it. So that's something that's been announced by Trump. But of course, we have to remember that Obama in his day had talked about the so-called Перезагрузка, reset of ties, and this was something that was seen as a hopeful, positive step in the relationship between the two countries. So in this case, we'll have to wait and see if these promises are actually delivered.
Well, hundreds of U.S. troops have landed in Norway for a 6-month deployment. Despite a warning from Russia, almost 300 U.S. Marines will participate in drills with the Norwegian Army less than 1,500 kilometers from the Russian border. Now, it's the first time since World War II that foreign troops have been allowed to be stationed in the Scandinavian country. Officials have denied any link between troops deployment and NATO's concerns over Russia, but it coincides with the U.S. sending several thousand troops to Poland to beef up its Eastern European allies. Earlier, senior Russian officials said the deployment is part of a U.S. military buildup and that it makes Norway fair game in the event of a nuclear confrontation.
In Indian-administered Kashmir, at the funeral of a separatist fighter, what began as a procession quickly turned into a demonstration, where anger seemed far more apparent than grief.
Every Kashmiri wants freedom from India.
Since the killing of a separatist leader last July, Muslim-majority Kashmir, which has been divided between India and Pakistan since 1947, has experienced the worst unrest in years. Sunday saw the latest bout of violence, when 3 Kashmiri separatists were killed in a gun battle with Indian security forces. While India and Pakistan have fought for control of Kashmir for decades, many worry that if the clashes worsen, it could inflame tensions even further between the two nuclear-armed neighbors.
Leaders across Israel are finally celebrating about the Paris Peace Conference. And it's all because of the, quote, weakened text of the summit's final joint declaration. The day-long summit came to a finish yesterday evening with a statement calling on Israel and the Palestinians to refrain from one-sided actions in their path towards peace. The declaration not only urged the two sides to restate their commitment to a two-state solution, but also to disassociate from voices that reject that goal. Israeli officials are also happy about the exclusion of the passages condemning the Israeli settlement enterprise that were included in the recent UN Security Resolution 2334. Just yesterday, the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry promised the Israeli Prime Minister that no further action against Israeli settlements is being planned at the UN Security Council. Turning now to American-Israeli relations, it looks like American involvement in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process will be shifting into the hands of President-elect Donald Trump's Jewish son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Trump has just confirmed that he will be using Kushner to try to broker a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians. The announcement comes just days after the controversial president-elect named the 36-year-old as a senior advisor in his upcoming administration, leading critics to accuse Trump of nepotism. The incoming leader says Kushner has been a, quote, tremendous advisor throughout his campaign and is proud that his son-in-law will have a key leadership role in his administration.
If you make an early morning stop at the Broad Street McDonald's, you'll probably see Antoinette Thibodeau. She sits alone, studying her Bible. But this isn't just her favorite reading spot. It's her safe haven.
Well, if it's cold, I come in to warm up.
Thibodeau is homeless.
But normally I just come in to see the smiles.
Falling on hard times, her life hasn't gone exactly the way she planned it. She isn't able to see her family very often, but ever since she walked into this McDonald's and met Darius McWhite, she has a new family.
He gave me a cup of free coffee, and ever since then, my coffee stays full. With all the workers here, it stays full.
Bringing her that cup of coffee each morning turned into a meal, then a conversation.
Y'all have made my day.
When I first encountered her, it was just something about her. I mean, I couldn't pinpoint it, but I reminded myself that that was me years back, and what if that was still me today?
Because I can have a bad night, you know, I can not sleep or something and just have a bad night and wake up and come straight here and just find smiles.
Their smiles, their generosity, not just toward Thibodeau, but everyone who's walked in needing a little support.
I don't consider them homeless. It's individuals that going through that test of faith to see if they can overcome that trial and tribulation. And at the end of the day, that might be that same person that I fed that'll be able to feed me.
He even gave Thibodeau a journal, which she writes in every single day.
Darius will come to the table when he's on break and read my Bible with me.
He said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs the kingdom of heaven." And I just felt like the more I started doing for her and the more I started seeing her, you know, just coming to work, hoping that she's there, just to have a conversation.
He's reminded every day just how lucky we all are.
Some of them don't have parents to go to. Some of them don't have homes to go to. Some of them don't have meals that they can actually afford to be able to get a meal.
McWhite has been able to provide some of those meals. And Thibodeau calls him her angel. But he says that goes both ways.
Tell her, I'm not just your angel, but you're my angel as well.
An unlikely friendship, but an unbreakable one.